Walpole. I'm doing the interviewing. I'm part of the social science department. We're doing the 50th anniversary oral history project, and we're interviewing Gibbs Murray, who is the chairperson of the display and exhibit department, and it's being done on December 6, 1994, in room D346. And if we can just turn it over to you now, and if you would tell us your name, your various positions you had, if you maybe work chronologically or what you're comfortable with.
Okay. You ready for me? Okay. The Display and Exhibit Design program at FIT is now in its fourth decade. It originated, I think, sometime in the very early 60s, probably about 1961, by the late, great Hugh Christie and Marty, who later became the gallery director at FIT. The remarkable thing about it is that it came to FIT because of the programs that are here, such as the fashion buying, merchandising, and all the retailing, and the fashion design things. And there truly was no program of its kind anywhere in the country as a major degree program. It originally started as a program with the photography major included, so you got a double degree. It was called Fashion Display and Photography, or Photography and Fashion Display, whichever, and they were separated sometime around the time that I came into the program, which was 1971, and as of this date, 1994, it is still a singular program as display and exhibit design anywhere in the country. It is, of course, because it's a SUNY college, State University of New York College, a two-year program with students receiving an Associate of Applied Science degree. But the program has grown, and its reputation has grown throughout all those years, and it still remains rather singular. There are other programs which have developed. One of the things that was, I thought, interesting 20 years ago that remains interesting now is that when we did have a meeting of advisors and various other people seminar, Joe Weishauer, who's a man I've worked with in this field for a long time, said, thank God there is at least one program. When you consider that most people use retail outlets, department stores, and specialty stores as their museums, it's notable that somebody needs to be doing that work, and it needs to be there. What is unique unto the field is that I think it is comprehensive of almost every field of art and design. In display and exhibition design, like theater design, you have to know about all of it. There are elements of interior design, advertising design. It's the whole thing. It's knowing fashion, it's knowing color and design, it's working very small, it's working very large, and it's working two-dimensionally and three-dimensionally, so that the concepts are all over. It ain't just windows, as we said years ago. The unfortunate and, I think, notable drawback in the field is that the public, and I think within the realm of FIT, still think of us as people who do three-dimensional window design or window trim. That's but a small part. If you indeed work that way, you do get the concept of whatever. We're selling a product. It's very much a commercial thing. If display is done well, you really don't notice that it's there. It is the whole image and presentation of all of merchandise in stores. It is the success or failure of their work. Every store now is selling identically the same stuff. It's the way in which they produce it and augment it, and it goes further than advertising design, and then it gets right down to the fixtures and whatever. It's an incredibly important field that is not recognized as such. One of the aspects of the program, which is point of purchase design, an aspect of display, has done surveys, and it is now known that over 50% of the purchasing decisions which are made at the point of sale. So they're in store. It's not done by reading magazines or newspapers or flyers. That's certainly done, but most people get into a store and do their purchasing there. It's what that atmosphere is, and if you're dealing with high-end merchandise, it certainly is a notable thing. But merchandise is indeed only one aspect of the overall structure of the thing. Not only is it retail, but display and exhibition design, and why we really call it display and exhibition design is that we don't see that there's a great deal of difference between selling Norma Kamali, Calvin Klein at one end, or Vincent van Gogh, or Leonardo da Vinci at the other, or any other product in between. That's not to denigrate or demean any one of those people and say that they have exactly the same pursuit or look, but you are promoting it. What is right for that in context of an exhibition, a display, a trade show booth, a museum, a retail outlet, a showroom, all of those areas, right through to theme parks. It's all display. Disney World is a great big display, and we seem to like it a lot. The artifice of our society is very much with us, and if indeed we put together and are able to produce the upper division program, which we have put on hold for a while, we really want to go to a 4-year program. I think it's essential. The new dean of the Art and Design Division feels very strongly that we must. I've been working with the title. We did produce something, and I need to update it again as media production design, because I think what we are dealing with is all aspects of all of that hands-on working. I would like to think that if we indeed were producing students who were required under case to design and build a 55-foot Mickey Mouse, that they could come up with the construction drawings and have a pretty good idea of how to do that, as well as to build cases and showrooms and design all of it. It's all there. It's pivotal in the field. The program is growing. Over the 30-some years that we've been here, and I've been here now, this is my 24th year, and the faculty, it's remained small as a program, and display nor exhibit design are household words. Certainly advertising design, photography, interior design, all of those things are. People indeed know what that is, and they're very much aware. One of the one of the terrible problems, as I think I've been saying, is that people do not really understand and gather the breadth of these fields, and so it's always an uphill battle academically to indeed try and produce this message to the outside world. Our enrollment has increased enormously over the years, I think. We did 15 years ago, has it been that long ago, I think added 2 sections to the major and to the graduating class. Currently, in the first semester, we have 3 sections due to over-enrollment. The employment of students coming out of the field is exceptionally good according to the employment records we have from the FIT Placement Office. I think that's significant, and they work in various areas, and we indeed teach the full spectrum, and I'll go into the program a bit. This program starts with students learning design and rendering. In other words, they start learning with the T-square and with a scale ruler, doing ground plans, elevations. That leads into 1-point perspective, 2-point perspective. Then they start doing model making with that, and all of those designs finally culminate in their second year. We refer to it as the senior project, 4th semester, where they build a major exhibit based on the designs from the models, ground plans, elevations, perspective drawings that they do. They, in studio design, which of course is the most familiar area of that we talk about in display, visual merchandising, starts with three-dimensional design concepts, windows, one might like to think, but it's advertising products with three-dimension, in a three-dimensional concept. Then they get into larger forms, and we have our students in their second semester working with mannequins and notable designers. I think historically that it's been very interesting in recent history that we have done Karl Lagerfeld for Chanel. We had 8 dresses shipped in here at the tune of $350,000 each. Made me very nervous, but the students in second semester got to do this, and the Chanel company came in, did an opening night with the students, and gave away the Coco cologne that they had just produced as a promotional event. It was enormously successful. So from there we went to do the Patrick Kelley exhibit, which was a retrospective and in conjunction with the memorial being held in the FIT amphitheater back in, is that 1989 or 90, somewhere there in Gloria Steinem, Cicely Tyson, and other people were at that thing, and we had television monitors out on the street with all of his last original designs. And there was a clip of Betty Davis on the David Letterman show wearing the question mark dress that Patrick Kelley had designed for her, and we had the dress on a mannequin. It was an exciting opening and event and a great tribute to an American designer who'd made it very big and very successfully in Paris. Then we followed that with the Romeo Gigli collection for The Woman in the Forest, which was done concurrently with Elle magazine. We did a retrospective on the 1970s look a few years ago that made it in the Associated Press to every small town newspaper across the country, dealing with platform shoes and hot pants, and with quotes from our instructors here who put together the exhibit. We have done several things. This past spring we did the Lycra exhibit with designers working in Lycra with the sponsorship of DuPont, which was again an exciting thing. What has happened in that area is that we realize that the event itself is terribly important. Students at FIT, we all know, come here because of the fact that they've made a decision very early in their lives, many of them, to take a particular major. You have to have a designated major to come into a program. And we don't anymore simply grade projects and return them. The excitement and the enthusiasm for the effort put in, because you're working in and outside of class, on weekends frequently, at nights, to put these productions together. You stage an event, you invite the industry in, and they see it, and that makes the whole thing much more exciting, and that's what display is all about. It's show business, it's show. And we have a program also in graphic design. Graphics, two-dimensional design is very much a part of our program. In the first semester you learn logo and type and set it. This is all hands-on mechanicals. It's not a computer-aided course. This is one basically showing you the fundamentals of design and how it works, how to put artwork with typography, and doing a store-wide graphic design in the second semester, so you do everything from awnings, banners, shopping bags, invitations, mailing pieces, an entire thing, so that's a portfolio piece students can use. They get into exhibition graphics and design, point size of type, how to hang an exhibit, how to put the copy there, because as we know, museums can be enormously exhausting, and getting around all of that and getting into the philosophy of it all. There's a course in visual merchandising practices. I alluded to visual merchandising in term a couple of times. Many people would prefer that we use the term visual merchandising rather than display. I tend to disagree. I think the larger focus is display. Visual merchandising is the term in the retail world that is currently being used and has been used for probably the past 25 years. It is very much part of it. Those terms are interchangeable as terms. The root word and the one that is known by most people outside the industry is display, and display has the grander aspect of it. Visual merchandising is not strictly limited to, but in the retail world alludes to the visual presentation of merchandise, and I think that the concept here is inclusive of that, but it's a lot larger, and it is exhibition design, and that is simply a follow-through of the whole scheme. There is, of course, in point-of-purchase design, which I've also mentioned previously, which is an enormously integral part of the program. It indeed has the sanction of the point-of-purchase industry, and we work with them on doing it. Recently, our students designed projects which won top awards in the PAVE contest, which is sponsored by the National Association of Display Industries, NADI. We've always had an affiliation with that organization, and our advisory panel indeed is comprised of a number of members of that, as well as other people in various other fields of exhibition.
Could you explain that organization a little more?
The NADI organization?
Yeah.
The NADI organization, yipes, is probably 50-some years old now, a little older than FIT, and it has semi-annual trade shows, one going on right now at Pier 90 and 92. We have participated, as our students have, in a booth for the department for FIT for a number of years, off and on. We don't have one currently in this market week because of the constraints of what the students are doing in the third semester curriculum. We will be at the next market at Javits Center in May.
What does it stand for?
The National Association of Display Industries, NADI, and it's an organization that is virtually in title now. There have been a number of offshoots of it. We're in the neighborhood of the visual merchandising market. The showrooms are here. The manufacturers and designers all have showrooms here in the neighborhood, and the out-of-town designers and manufacturers show their wares at one of the convention centers, and buyers come in from all over the country.
You explained our relationship, your department's relationship to the advisory board. We're made up of primarily these people. If you could discuss that relationship with the industry,
Okay.
how you affect them and how they affect you.
Okay, I'll know better on that tomorrow morning. I'm having breakfast here with members of the advisory panel. Our advisory panel is very diverse in that one of the members is the head designer for the American Museum of Natural History. Another is an environmental designer for the Bronx Zoo. Yet another member is the display director of Stern Stores. Another is now the president of the NADI organization, and other people have their own companies, their own businesses in the display or exhibition areas or freelance design areas, so that they're diverse. It's essential that we get that matrix of it. Where the advisory panel is enormously helpful to us when I talk about the events and doing things with students. Our students in the second year program have for years, it was Hugh Christie who came up with the notion, and he originated the first event, I think, was that when the students have completed the design of their projects for the major exhibition, that we schedule a presentation which is done in an evening, and the group of students, they're divided into about 8 or 9 groups depending on how many students, of 4 or 5 each, will present the ground plans, elevations, perspective, drawings, the models of everything, explain how it would be built, how it would be constructed, why they have decided to do this, in front of the advisory panel and other invited guests. We invite administration and faculty also from other departments to attend this event. Upon the completion of the various groups forming, they leave the room, and everybody except the advisory panel and immediate faculty remain, and we set the models up, discuss it briefly, bring the students all back in. They are then introduced to the advisory panel if they've not met them previously, and the projects are discussed by the advisors, which I think is terrific. The former acting dean of art and design here said she likened it to the school play, and it has sort of that feeling. It's enormously rewarding, I think, to get that kind of feedback, and of course, because the field is diverse, the opinions of their work is also very diverse. Somebody will tell you that they like this design because it has frontage, and dealing in a store you want that. Someone else will tell you that they didn't like that same design because it doesn't have the traffic flow as you need in a museum situation or something. So they get thrown a lot of stuff therein, but it's very good, it's very effective. We meet with the advisory panel to discuss what the trends are currently in the market. One of the great problems, I think, more is that all of us in business, be it academic or professionally out there, are trying to keep pace with the technology that we're dealing with fax machines and printouts and everything else, that the time allotted to give the consideration is difficult. I'm very concerned about the attendance tomorrow at breakfast. I'm always more pleased when I get up there and realize there are more people there who are able to come. A number of our board come from various parts of the country. We do it traditionally in line with the NADI Market Week because there's a great percentage there that we can bring in at that time. It's awkward for some people and difficult, but they have been extremely helpful. In the past, we've had them give us lists for employment. They've worked with the director of placement at FIT, which I think been very good, so that we've got that market opening up. I'm always been anxious because of the uniqueness of this program that we draw students from on the other side of the Mississippi River. We have an enormous international diversity in the student population. I think that's wonderful, but I think that
students come from other countries to
yes,
study here?
yeah.
This program?
Oh yeah, and we have people who come into this program who have indeed got 4-year degrees in interior design or graduate program degrees and other things, because the only place they can get it. And they feel that it's something that they must have, and it's a unique slant, and it's so very different. It's very easy, I think, to give a project in store design, and one could, as an interior designer, perhaps design something quite delightful and quite extraordinary, but it doesn't answer the problems of what merchandising needs are therein. That's really us, and you have to put that combination. It's not an easy task to do it, but the multiple aspects of the industry are what's fascinating to look to in terms of alumni, because of where they are, what jobs they've gone into, what changes they've made, where they're at, and you will find that they go through the various aspects, because you can apply to all these jobs, and certain of the skills that are learned applicable at one particular point and not at another. There are other times when indeed they're multiple, when indeed you have to do not only the display work for a company, but you do the point of purchase design, the advertising layouts, all of the graphic work, all of that kind of stuff. Other people are strictly involved in museum work, some in department stores. They're all over the place, and that's fine.
Keep in contact with the alumni?
Yeah, we do. Not as rigorously as one would like to be able to do. It's hard to keep addresses and things updated, and I think that there's a concentrated effort perhaps at FIT to develop some sort of program. I would think technologically that we can put everything on a computer and feed out stuff. We hear from alumni because they come through the job bank and they stop by. And that happens with some frequency. And there's a fall-off ratio after 3 or 4 years you don't see them. And there are special people who come back after years that you see. One is inclined to, in just shopping, run across somebody that has graduated from this program. It used to be fun. I used to do field trips as many years ago and go up to store windows and see them in there with a class on the outside. And there was always that wonderful smile because we know exactly that we too, before that, I think I've been teaching for absolutely ever. One of the members of our advisory panel is the president of Hinsgall Mannequins USA, that's having a big industry party tonight. The guests of honor being Saks Fifth Avenue. They designed the frowning mannequin there, and James Damien, president of this company, was my student back in my second or third class, and there's some very notable people from that particular class. In fact, the one alumni show that was held at FIT exhibit was for Victor Carranza of that same class. Victor Carranza was my student, and Victor is internationally known for any number of things, from jewelry design, fashion, flatware, place settings, you name it. And of course he did come in here and design his own exhibit. And so it's all over the place therein.
How many students do you have in the program now?
In the program currently, there's 110. In the major, there are 63 in the first year, and there are, let's see, and 47, I think, in the 45, 47 in the second year program.
What were the students like in the early stages of the program? You know, in terms of I'm a sociologist, in terms of ethnic background, in terms of the socioeconomic background. You mentioned some students now have BAs. You know, where did they come from? What were they like?
I get very discouraged sometimes about the lack of ability of administration and with the understanding of art and design programs and whatever. And as soon as I do, I go back in the classroom. Somebody once said that our students are not Harvard scholars. They're quite brilliant, the students at FIT. I really think they're quite marvelous. They're asked, as the late President Feldman said, to come in at 18 years of age, which is the mean age of what most of them are. There are certainly people coming back to school, and I've had students my age currently in the class over the years. And but they make a decision to do this. And how they find this is rather remarkable. The state school, all those programs are there in front, and when they do come in, they come in with some feeling you suspect that they like store windows like everybody else. It's something like that, or they've enjoyed playing around in the local shopping mall, something like that. And what we're trying to do is build the aesthetic. What has happened in the diversity of the students that we've gotten over the years is that they do tend to blend in terms of work. You have some very exceptional work on one side of the room, and there's some kid out of high school who's looking over and saying, "Oh my God, isn't that too fabulous? Couldn't I do?" they suddenly are doing that, and the person who's had all those degrees and worldly experience is looking back over and looking at the degree of originality and very fresh approach to the design thing of the other student. I loved bringing the advisory panel into classrooms because you can point out students from, I had a wonderful class that was Norway, Sweden, Israel, Mexico, Guatemala, and Korea in one group, and they work together beautifully all the time. And there's wonderful give and take and rapport there. There's an enormous contingency at FIT, and certainly within our program, of students from Southeast Asia. There is great interest in the field of visual merchandising because of their own merchandising. They realize you cannot sell product without visual concepts, and only in this country do we really know it well. There certainly are wonderful European designs and things, but on a day-to-day basis, the American store, first and foremost, has got had held it, I think, almost singularly until recent years. There are certain places like London and Harvey Nichols and places like that, but they brought an American designer who's now back as the designer at display director at Macy's to do that. But it is a concept that is ours, and they want desperately to know how to do that. Leslie Wexner, no less, who is the founder, creator of The Limited, and Lane Bryant and Henry Bendel, has said that the two most important aspects of retail are image and presentation. Well, that's display and exhibit design. Ralph Lauren has said that display is the most important part of the sale. It's evidenced by everything that we see now. We know the display level in window display of Tiffany's, the Jean Moore windows of yours, which are very precise. They are jewels of windows with one single jewel in them, to the clutter of the Ralph Lauren concept, but we know them. It's a well-coordinated image, and the visual merchandising concepts of the gap are what make that so significant. And we have all of these students coming in from all over and going back with the kind of ideologies, or inventing their own. And
Were they always from all over? Did we always have a large group?
no, it's been within the past 10 years, I think, something like that. Probably a little longer than that. And what the diversity in education has done, I think, truthfully, it has broadened the possibilities. I think there's something terribly provincial in the thinking in New York. I always have. I think that it's a city that you can't get into without knowing the Throg's Neck Bridge is where you're going to the Sawmill Parkway. It never says New York City on any entrance. That's a New Yorker's idea. Either they're born here, they live here, and do that. People come from outside, and the students that we have who have been brought up here are suddenly looking at very different programs other than their own. And as faculty, you realize very different scopes of many lives here and therein. There are students who are going by the skin of their teeth here. Finances are difficult. That's one of the remarkable things of FIT, is that it's considered affordable, less and less so all the time. I mean, nothing is cheap. Supplies certainly are not, and tuition, but it's unique that in a community college, part of the state thing that you've got as rare and recognized a program as the display and exhibit design program is that we have. We've worked very hard to develop it. Very few full-time people. I just called one of my instructors who was running out the door this morning. She'd gotten the kids off to school, but she is working constantly in the industry. It's the pulse. Most of the people in all the professions here are doing that, and we keep absolutely current because of that. I certainly don't. I'm here all the time, trying to figure out how to get through the next crisis, but they really are doing that kind of work. That's the excitement of New York. That's what's given FIT its reputation as a community college. It suddenly sticks out. I mean, it's this star among the numbers, I think, is that it's so incredibly geared to an industry that is so immediate, and it's right in the center of it. Had it been a private school plopped down in the same location, it would have had perhaps the same good fortune, but it would not have had necessarily the same students because its cost factor would have been enormously.
If you think back to the your early days here, where did the students come from? Were they students whose family worked in the retail industry, or?
There were cases like that. We had one section only, and studio ideally should run, and I look back at the halcyon days when we were running classes that had 18 students. We now have classes of 25. I think it's too overloaded. I think, like a number of the New York students today, they come in because they either have shopped and they like it, or they like the visual concept, or they have been, while working on the selling floor, been handed a mannequin or props and have had to display them, and have thought that there's something. Then we immediately bring them into the program and tell them, fine, great, that's where you start, but it's much larger, and we rarely had anybody fall back and say, no, I just want to do that. They do. Most of the calls that I get from people who want to take a course in continuing education will say they'd like to take a course in window display, and they can get that as an introduction, but it's much grander. But I think that's where those students came from those days, basically. James Damian, that I mentioned, father had been in the men's clothing business, and it was a sort of and he'd grown up in that business, and therefore he recognized that he wanted a design aspect. You find people who have had that merchandising background, that they really kind of love it, want to do something more with their hands, and feel that this urgency, they recognize the design possibilities. It's wonderful to get somebody in the program who has sophistication and has some knowledge of what the concepts are about. That's fairly rare, and the better aspect, I think, is that you can mold and develop that aesthetic. We have never been a program which has wanted to put students out onto the street and say, go up and get a job at Macy's. That's not the point of the program at all. It's developing a much larger aesthetic of art and design that is applicable to selling a product. And if they go on to other venues in design, more power to them. I love that, but don't feel any kind of loss of allegiance there in them doing it. I think that they that's information that you taught. It doesn't go sour, it doesn't go bad, it's not wrong.
How is, again, in terms of the issue of how your program is developing the next stage, as you see it, as an upper division program?
The upper division program, which we wrote about 4 or 5 years ago now, and then we redid the lower division program, and that's been in place now in its second, third year, finally. Put on hold until we got through that, and it's been asked that we bring it up again. I've been concerned about developing that program if it could not be implemented because of cutbacks and that kind of stuff. It seems to me that we did the whole thing and that it sits there, and sure, it's got to be updated, but I want to know that we could get it moving and actually produce it. There's been a number of requests from students. Our advisory panel says, oh yes, you do need it. The focus we have to look at again. There are students who come to us because and would like to develop in a theater design kind of orientation. That's not the fundamental practice of FIT. It's not a vocational thing, but I think to be able to design that way, and I say theme park, that kind of stuff, to move it into a larger focus. There's no theater design construction kind of thing, television sets, that kind of thing, those commercial things which are done in New York, and well, not necessarily that it be done here, but the information on how to do all of that. The event, we do have a course I didn't mention in the program of event and promotion design. We have a lot of people who have gone that way. We developed that upper division program to include that, threw a lot of stuff in. I think that the focus would be on point of purchase sale in the retail thing, and in exhibition design and construction, probably.
Now, does the advisory panel provide any funding for you for this? I know you
No.
get funds.
Be awfully nice. There are programs that indeed are underwritten by industry because they put together a very definite product. The cosmetics industry, for instance, puts together thing. The toy program in the upper division here is also underwritten by all the toy manufacturers. We don't have an industry that has that kind of financing or support that is putting a singular product out. That's one of the problems in trying to do it. It's a problem that many other programs face. I think that ad design, interior design, illustration are probably in the same boat there. You don't have those singular big companies that do that. It's a much more diverse field, and so we're not funded.
Okay, but do you feel that you influence the industry, and the industry, do you see it as a kind of give and take process? It seems to me that's what you're saying, that you're shaping the industry and the industries are shaping you.
Years ago, one of the comments that I heard was that the display director at one of the major department stores said, thank you, he said, now we hire students who've come out of display programs only in the merchandising. It was too difficult. I came into the field from fine arts, and that's where many people in various backgrounds came into. People were not in this field. You couldn't get an education here. Now they really want that. They look for it, and because it makes incredibly more sense to do that. But it is, again, always an educational problem that the industry doesn't, their own worst enemies in many ways, recognize what we're doing. One of my colleagues that I mentioned that worked with Joe Weissler was recently asked by one of the major chain discount stores across the country to come in and train all their CEOs, their top execs, in visual merchandising practices because they're losing out to another chain, and they simply felt that what they really need to do is, if they've got top brass coming in with an understanding of visual presentation, they can do it, and then they take it to the in-store sales staff and say, do this and pull this together. The importance, though the head offices send out all these programs and that sort of stuff, in-house, the people who are selling the merchandise got to be capable of showing it and doing it, keeping clean. The merchandise constantly is moved by customers. It's got to be upgraded and look good, and the better you make it look. I mean, the Gap doesn't do anything other than display merchandise and coordinates. That's what makes it go. So that I don't know if that's answering the question quite in terms of give and take.
Do you do training like that? Will you do a series of seminars for the industry if they call you?
We get calls, and we do through the seminar department. We do a number of them. One of the faults I find with the request is that they want us to give them the merchandising practices of a particular discounter, chain store, something like this, of Sears, of the limited things. And I've always said, then go to the limited and go to Sears. Don't come to us. That's not what we teach, and that's sort of it's none of our business. I mean, it is in terms of learning it, but we do not, distribute that way so that you can, knock off what they do. If they wanted you to know that, then they could tell you. I think you can talk the overview of American merchandising, but not duplicate it. I think it's an original field that I don't think what works for one place works for all of them.
We're winding down, and if you can think of your description of how FIT developed, are there key events that you would like to ensure are part of the history?
I think that FIT as a 2-year school has always been sort of a crux because to many people and a criticism. And I never quite got it and understood it, and always thought that this 4-year thing would be certainly enough. I wasn't sure you could ever sustain things. The late Marvin Feldman, president of FIT, 2 months before he died, was at the dedication of the Marvin Feldman Center, September '93. I had the good fortune of attending. And Marvin, who was a speaker who could go on at great length in his ill health there, succinctly said something in front of our new president and the board of trustees of FIT and faculty friends who were standing on the street that I thought was breathtakingly wonderful, and I'll never forget it. And I think it is the crux of this school. And he said, "Don't forget it," and I don't intend to, and I hope no one else loses sight of it. He said that nobody wants you to have this 2-year program. It's unpopular. It's like 4-year programs all over. And he cited all the criticisms of it, and he said, don't lose it. Don't let me say not to put down the upper division programs, as they're called, and for the BFA degree, the 3rd and 4th year. It's a 2+2 program, he said, and 2 years for the AAS degree, and if you get that degree, then you can go on and get a BFA possibly, and we actually have a graduate studies program at FIT. So many of those programs are developed, but he said the 2-year degree empowers these students. And I thought, as clearly and succinctly as that, it empowers them. And I think the important thing is that unlike liberal arts colleges across the country, where indeed you move into college getting great bulks of information in various courses from the humanities, arts, sciences, that you have to make a choice, because the bottom line, nobody likes that word, is vocational, but what it does to that student, particularly I think the cross-section of our students, not to make them stereotypical at all, is say, I did it. They work very hard, and they do achieve, they get that degree, and as a result of making that attainment, they can go out into the field, they can and they do find work, and they are successful. I hope they remember me. But they're very good at it. Or they continue in school and they go on for a BFA. They manage to keep a grade point high enough so that they can get into an upper division program, and there's great success therein. I think that that's a wonderful way. When you read about colleges where students are taking X amount of credits leisurely and spending 6 years in college now, when you consider the cost factor, that's not necessarily going to for everybody financially. And our students, for most of them, have got to get out and do that, and to concentrate that study and say you've got to do it within that period of time is not an open and shut door. It leads to other things, but I think there's a sense of purpose about the programming. That's what I think is so incredibly good and strong. And if I could say anything about the students, from the time I see their portfolios, to the time they enter classes, to the time they come back the second year, to the time they graduate and I see them later, is the growth is like your long lost brother or sister's kid that you see every so often. They change light years in a very short period of time. The maturity and the depth is marvelous, and it's an exciting move into adulthood, into a professional career.
Okay, would you like to add anything on to the tape?
I think I'd like to say that if programs do go into 4 years here, that we keep it the 2 plus the 2, that degree is there, and that great point achievement is there, and that the art and design division, which is misunderstood, gets the right representation in the administration for understanding, because it is the thing in this neighborhood that truly, not to denigrate the business and technologies department, because the combination of those things work vitally together. They are very different, but the two programs has made this school a very strong success, and the art and design division needs the support. We need facilities. All the money has gone to computers, and I think that that's urgent and necessary, and there's still some wrinkles therein, but we must look toward getting a facility that's going to house a shop that indeed we can build and grow. FIT peaked several years ago, I think, in where it was going, and it fluctuates, and I think with an all-new administration it's going to take some time to fully understand what this school really is about, and not to remold it. Don't take something that's already working and try and fix it. Let's not work backwards. Let's keep this thing going, because from a very small little school in those 21 years of Marvin Feldman, and looking back and now only seeing it, we really achieved something, I think, of honor and greatness, and I think that it's got miles to go, but we dasn't at our 50th anniversary sit on our laurels and look back. We're in economic hardships, that's appreciative, but we must not lose sight of the educational goals of this school, and the vitality that we've got here. The students haven't, we can't either.
What facilities do you need now when you talk about facilities?
This school needs a large shop for the art and design division that is fully staffed with technical people, so that we have supplies, instruction, and materials to build, make things for those needs that have to be done, that is open and usable, so that we're not dealing in a hypothetical way. It's one of the things that concerns me with doing an upper division program, is that you really need that hands-on kind of shop. We need that kind of thing. The word space is verboten around here, of course. There is a space for that particular thing, and times are not easy, but it is vital to the whole structure of the whole operation of art and design.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.